Hello, I'm Dylan,
I'm Keon.
and this is Zenith, that podcast where we can finally put our God complex to good use, because this week we watched Deliverance,
Written by Terry Nation.
directed by Michael E. Bryant.
And aired on March 20th, 1978.
Yeah, so we're almost at the end of this season of
Right,
Blake 7, almost at the end of Terry Nation's run of 13 straight episodes.
And he does more for Series 2, and then a little more, and then severely, I think, drops off for Series 3/C and
Yeah.
4/D.
Yeah, I think they're officially referred to as Series A, B, C, and D, although I'm not really sure who made that choice or why they made
Yeah.
that choice.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to matter, and it's a lot easier and
Less
just
confusing
less
to say
confusing
1,
to
2,
say-
3, 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh well.
But yeah, this one definitely leads into the next one a lot more. So, this season started with the way back in Spacefall, which were sort of two halves of the same thing, which we mentioned in both of those episodes.
Mhm.
And this one definitely feels like it's leading up to a bigger finale because it's not as episodic. It's episodic because there's, this thing with the colony or whatever and Jenna getting captured.
Right.
But at the same time, it's leading into the next episode, which is nice.
Yeah, it's like a pseudo two-parter.
Yeah.
It's not directly... You don't have to watch both parts, I feel like, to get the full story. I guess that will be a judgment to make next week when we've actually watched Aurak, but...
Yeah, because Aurak is just mentioned in name as a big thing people are looking for. I already know what it is, but...
I already know kind of what it is.
All right, well, I don't think we're going to spoil it, so...
No. Although, I will mention now, because I know I'll forget to mention this next week. I saw on Twitter, someone was like, do you think Aurak was just a Terry Nationism for the word oracle? And I was like, I wonder. Anyway.
Something to keep in mind, I guess. Anyway, it starts with two guys in a vehicle of some sort.
It looks like a boat.
Yeah, it
and
looks
this
like
was
a
my
yacht.
award for this week. I know my award is in the first scene of the episode, but my award this week goes to this spaceship for most creative use of just a lifeboat in the history of lifeboats. Because it legit looks like they just got a lifeboat, put like a roof on it, put it on wheels, and wheeled it through the studio and recorded it.
Yeah, the movement of this ship is definitely really terrible and one of the worst spaceship sort of, I don't know what else to call it, but movements so far. It definitely just looks like it's on wheels and someone's just pulling it towards the camera.
Yeah, which is
Probably exactly what it is.
bizarre because they've been using models for all the other ships, which say what you will about how janky the movement looks for the models. At least
I
it
think
looks more natural than the boat.
I mean, I think the movement actually looks pretty good, when they actually bother to move them, because sometimes it's just still shots, but, it looks pretty good most of the time.
Right.
Pursuit ships look pretty good. The Liberator always looks pretty good. The movement looks natural or something that could realistically be achieved, I guess, if that technology existed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think the model work isn't perfect.
I mean, the Liberator is great. I've been, for the past couple months, been seeing tons of, I guess, rare shot or pictures of the Liberator model from that Making Blake 7 Twitter account, and, it looks great. And that doesn't necessarily come through on screen all the time because the quality isn't that good. But the model itself looks pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I guess I'm just comparing the Liberator model work movement-wise, I guess, to
Modern
Star Trek.
CG,
To Star Trek, because the original series and Next Generation actually, and Deep Space Nine to an extent, used models for most of their spaceships as well, and I just feel like it was a lot better achieved on those shows than it is on this one.
Well, that's just a thing in general that, Star Trek
was
a lot-
basically the pinnacle of model work, I think, on TV. I think most TV shows that use spaceship models look up to Star Trek as kind of the zenith, so to speak, of model work on television.
Yeah, and it's a BBC show. Blake 7, that is, so, their budget isn't going to be more than $5 in the string they found in their pocket.
I found this pocket lint, boys. So then, we kind of see, this is a little bit this scene was a little bit weird to me because we see the ship moving through space, and then we cut to Serverland in her office, I guess.
Well, not yet, because we see there's some cryptic dialogue between the two guys in the ship about how, the price. One of them says, like, who knows if that price was reasonable or something. You don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and then we just cut to Serverland. She's like, "Huh?
Really? We cut to Serverland right now?
Yeah, we do and then she's got. So what I thought was going on then, because we cut straight to Serverland right now, what I thought was going on...
she just presses a couple switches and then they cut back.
She's like watching the ship on like a radar, so I thought, they're like spies or something, or they work for the Federation, which they do to an extent, but what I thought...
Well, Marriott definitely does.
What I thought, because then they crash, and I thought, based on the cuts to Serverland, that like, the crash was intentional, they're trying to...
I mean, it kind of was.
Them trying to make them out to be sympathetic for Blake to pick them up so they can get someone on the ship to take over the Liberator. That's not what happens at all.
That's not... That second part of that isn't true, but I mean, like, Marriott dying was definitely part of Serverland's plan, or something that she was willing to incorporate into her plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, things start going wrong on the ship, and they can't fix it, so they start crashing into a nearby planet that looks exactly like Jupiter.
It's probably honestly just a picture of Jupiter
with the red spot taken off.
They called up the art department. It's like, here's a picture of Jupiter. We need you to paint this. Don't paint the red spot because it's too recognizable.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of a dumb thing to nitpick about because, like, what can you really do with a planet? Like, how many planet designs are there? Just, spherical things with like cool colors. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
And, rings sometimes, but...
Rings sometimes.
Anyway, they crash into the planet.
Yeah, they crash. And then we finally get the Liberator, and Blake's like, hey, there's a ship that's going to crash into that planet. And Zen's like, it's going to crash in 5 minutes. And Blake's like, what do we do?
There's a diagram of this on their screens, and it looks questionable. Because it looks like the ship is going into, like, the core of the planet.
Serverland's diagram was questionable because the ship was massive on her diagram and the planet was about the same size. It needs a little knot to scale in the bottom right corner. Can you imagine how big the Liberator would appear on that diagram? Take up the entire screen.
Or maybe it would just be this: if the ship and the planet are the same size, maybe it just shows everything at the same size, which seems really not useful at all.
Yeah, it seems like that would be completely useless. How would you determine the distance between two objects on that?
Yeah, really wouldn't do anything now that you think about it. Anyway,
so
it crashes down, and a couple of them go down to find out what's going on.
Yeah, so Avon basically says, we'll go down this time. Avon's
like reluctant about it, but at the same time, he's like, yeah, I'll go down.
And Blake's like, be careful. And Avon's like, what, worried that I'm going to do better than you? And Blake's like, no, of course not. And Avon takes Jenna, Gan, and Villa. Avon's also wearing this really gaudy, over-the-top...
Gaudy, because he's like a god?
Not quite, but sure. Reflective silver.
It's the blind, because the sunlight reflects off the bright white snow, which reflects off his bright white
reflective jumpsuit
and blinds his enemies.
I mean, I was going to say it's weird because I know he does have a color-coded jumpsuit like everyone else, but he decides to just wear this basically wearable, hey, look at me, I'm over here alert.
Anyway, yeah, this part sort of made me think about that theory I made in like episode 4 or something, like the web, 4 or 5, where I conjectured, I guess, that all the characters were portrayed as Blake sees them, and he's really insecure about Avon, like, being better than him.
Well, I read that the original script had Blake and Avon's roles, and this switched.
Which would have been nice, considering Avon is getting vastly more screen time and things to do than anyone, including Blake.
Yeah, and I didn't find out why they swapped them in the end to make Avon the one who goes down to the planet.
Because of Chris Boucher.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I had to guess, it'd be because Chris Boucher and Paul Darrow were basically best buds.
Although I can kind of justify this for myself at least and think that it was a good decision because launching the ship and figuring out the computers at the end seems more of an Avon-esque thing than a Blake-esque thing.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't seem unreasonable that Blake would also launch the ship.
I mean, to
But,
me, it
whatever.
seems like more likely that Blake would launch it just because Blake tries to help out wherever he can. Avon's kind of been shown
Yeah,
to
that's
do
true.
things for his own
That's true.
purposes. This is just a fun little anecdote, but I read that the BBC took a poll of the most liked characters at the end of the season. I think it went Avon, Blake, Jenna, Villa, and then Callie Gann, I think. I know Gann was at the bottom.
Yeah, well, I can see why.
So,
Well, I mean, he has less to do. He's been given less things to do than all the other characters. He's less distinct, I mentioned the Blake 7, I mentioned this on Twitter actually. The Blake 7 wiki, the intro for Gan is completely savage. It's just like Gan had no special skills beyond brute force. Unlike the other characters, he was not a professional criminal.
his limiter also seems to be working at questionable efficiency in this because...
Bill, I really enjoyed that.
Okay, wait, we're not there yet. No, we're not there yet. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
And there's also the fact that, he's at least a killer, if not like a rapist. So, I can see why people didn't, necessarily care for Gan. Villa's my favorite character so far.
I think mine's... Well, it was Jenna, but she's been doing less and less now, so it's probably Blake.
Right, good. As long as it's not Avon.
What do you have against Avon?
I mean, I just think he's overpowering the show.
Avon 7. So they split up into pairs. Good thinking. They don't split up into singles, which was a big problem on Doctor Who. So they split up into pairs.
Yeah, so Avon goes with Villa. Another point in that Villa and Avon being best friends theory. There's also, we didn't mention this last week, but there was a line last week from Villa where Avon acknowledges his existence and no one else is acknowledging his existence, and he sort of turns towards the camera and he's like, so he does care, wow.
I think he says almost makes it all worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, which is interesting. I still see it as a massive antagonism, but there is that sort of theory out there.
I also read that Terry Nation wasn't pleased with Michael Keating's interpretation of Villa.
We called him Michael Keaton for the entirety of
last
week.
Oh no.
But Michael Keating and Michael Keaton, pretty suspicious, right? Similar names, both actors, never appear together.
If you were making yourself a fake identity, I would choose a name as far as possible from my real name. My fake identity would be like Billy Bob Joe or something. It's cunning, no one would ever expect it, he says as he strokes his beard. Anyway.
Gan goes off with Jenna.
Gan and Jenna don't find anything of note at all except a door carved into the side of this rock quarry they're filming in.
They sort of just... Well, this one's sort of a distinct rock quarry because it's partially snowed. I guess it's not snowing. It's just has snowed recently.
I mean, that doesn't mean that they didn't just take a rock quarry they filmed in before and dump snow on it and film it from a different angle.
No, it doesn't. Switches it up a little bit, makes it
They do find a pod, and the guy in the pod is dead.
Yeah, so they contact
Liberator.
the Liberator.
They're like, he's dead.
Blake's like, all right.
But Avon and Villa do find someone who's alive, and they teleport him up. I want to also bring up here that we see the box of teleport bracelets, and I want to mention that they're running drastically low on teleported bracelets, because they've been throwing them away like candy in these past 10 episodes.
Well, they had a bunch when they first discovered them. I guess they've just been careless with them.
Well, because the thing is, when you teleport someone off the ship and you don't teleport them back, you don't get that bracelet back.
Yeah.
Like they teleported the surgeon off in
They've teleported a lot of people off.
And they never get those bracelets back.
Yeah.
They need to start being a little more...
frugal.
Yeah, frugal with their teleporter bracelets. And so they find someone alive.
I'm sure that won't even be a point in the show. I'm sure they'll just have unlimited teleporter bracelets whenever they need them.
On making Blake 7... one of the directors was like, we had to start being real careful what angle we showed the teleporter bracelet box at because we were running dangerously low on teleporter bracelets and we didn't want people to realize that we were...
Well, I mean...
Not that it seemed like Michael E. Bryant cared in this story.
Well, I mean, out of behind the scenes, out of universe, the teleport bracelet problem is just them not making enough. So, kind of a dumb comment.
But still.
I think. But anyway, yeah, they teleport the survivor back onto the Liberator. Or not back onto the Liberator, onto the Liberator.
Yeah, and Jenna didn't come through. Somehow, nobody notices this as soon as they teleport everyone on board. Again, no one paying attention to who's coming through the teleporter.
Yeah, they did this first to Callie in Seek, Locate, Destroyer. They didn't notice her for like 5 minutes.
Callie also is supposed to be manning the teleporter, but she's like sitting on the ground by the door listening to her Walkman. And
okay, this was my award for this episode because Callie's just sitting there like near the teleporter control panel, just on her VR headset, just doing her own thing. And this was my award for most predictive technology on Blake 7 because it's a VR headset, which are getting pretty popular these days.
I actually almost gave an award to this exact same scene because Callie's sitting on the floor instead of in the much more comfortable chair.
Just rocking out to her
VR, and Blake's like sitting next to her, like with his head in his hands.
Oh God!
Like, why?
I want to use this for the episode screenshot on social media.
It's just such a perfect encapsulation
of what Blake 7 really is. There's some good sitcom-y scenes between Servalan and Travis later on too.
Oh God, this show. Sometimes you just want to hate the decisions they made, but you just can't.
Maybe in that shot, Callie represents Chris Boucher, and Blake represents Terry Nation.
No, I think it's the other way around. I think Terry Nation's the one just rocking out to whatever he wants, and Chris Boucher's like, no.
But anyway, they bring them back.
This button sequence to bring people back on the teleporter seems to have gotten vastly more complex as the series has gone on.
I noticed this, and I always, whenever they do this, I always think about how the actor must feel, because, well, maybe they don't, because maybe they actually take their job seriously and do it well, which, I think they do, because the acting on the show is pretty good. Mm-hmm. But, if this was me in this position, I was told to press all these buttons on the control panel, I wouldn't do a good job of it. I just think it was stupid, pressing these buttons that do absolutely nothing.
Well, apparently switches. Paul Darrow was like really. He basically was like made everyone remember the sequence because he got really upset when people pushed the buttons.
Yeah, he William Hartnelled it. So, like in the original 3 series of Doctor Who, I seem to remember that William Hartnell would get pissed when people would tell him like.
The wrong buttons on the TARDIS console.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Paul Darrow's getting pissed at people for pushing the wrong buttons on the teleporter.
Well, that's actually a good thing, because, he's taking it seriously.
And he's keeping everyone else in check.
Anyway, they take this guy to the medical bay, because he's dying.
Yeah.
There's actually a weird line earlier. Jenna says that anyone in those pods could, survive an impact without even... without even a scratch, without even a bruise.
Yeah, because they were designed to absorb impact, I think she says.
Yet the one guy dies and the other guy is almost dead. Just kind of strange there.
That's a plot. I've got to move the plot forward somehow. Decision. So, I think we get...
They realize Jenna's not... Well, Jenna gets kidnapped by one of the... There are these shots of... some sort of cavemen-looking group snooping around. Yeah. I guess they're not snooping around because it's where they live. They're just investigating what's going on, and they kidnap Jenna.
Yeah. Yeah. And Avon... I really liked this scene because he kind of played into that Avon... It's like, what, you think I'm going to do better than you? And Blake's like, no, I'm not a void. Avon's like... They realize that Jenna's missing, and Avon immediately turns to Blake. He's like, we'll go back. And Blake's like, you better. And Avon looks like really scared. And he's like, oh, shoot, gotta go back. Gotta go find Jenna. So he takes Gan and Villa back down to go find Jenna, and Blake and Callie stay on the ship with Ensor is the guy's name.
Yep. I think now we cut to Travis and Servalan.
Well, I think we do cut to Travis and Servalan now, but just before we do, Ensor mentions that they need to find his father and they need to tell him that the Federation will pay full price for Orak.
Yeah, and we find the power cells that he's holding as well, or Callie does. She asks Blake what they are.
Blake's like, hell if I know.
And Blake also finds the guy's credentials.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think Gan, I guess, delivered the credentials of like the dead guy.
Yeah.
Marriott to Blake, and he's like, I wonder if this guy has Federation credentials as
well. No
well.
relation to Marriott hotels.
As far as we know. Well, it's spelled differently too, but as far as we know.
3 seasons from now, Marriott Hotel on Blake 7. So we get Travis and Servalan, and Servalan basically tells Travis that he's been disgraced and that he has no command anymore because of everything that happened in Project Avalon, because basically Travis is a bumbling buffoon.
She mentions how the old Travis, before he was imprisoned, would have never let any of this happen. And Travis is like, you know what, maybe you're right.
And then Servalan's like, I've come up with my own plan now because you're useless.
Well, Servalan also, I think, tells him that she's one of the only people willing to give him another chance.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a little weird because she was the only one willing to give him a chance in the first place, and it didn't seem like anyone was willing to let Travis out except her.
Yeah, I think he went back to jail or something. He lost his command for sure. He's been disgraced again. I think she says, hey, do you want to get your command back? And he's like, yeah, what are you thinking? She's like, I'm going to need you to do this really dangerous thing that's probably going to get you killed, and really, you have no reason to do for it, but if you don't, I'm going to get you court-martialed and get your trial back on. He's like,
He's like, well, all right. I think he says, if it gives me the chance to kill Blake, I'll do it, or something like that.
She basically explains this plan. I didn't really understand this
plan It's a little confusing. It's a little confusing, and I don't think I understood it fully as well.
I think the gist of it is that the Federation... Okay, so the surface level plan is that the Federation wants to buy Orak.
Okay, well, there's some backstory to this plan, too, because Ensor's dad created Orak.
But we don't find out what
Orak is.
And Servalan doesn't know what Orak is either.
Yeah, so he spent his entire life creating Orak, put, millions or however many credits into it, dozens of years, and Servalan wants it.
Right, and so the surface level plan is, we're going to buy Orak for 100 million credits.
Even though it's worth supposedly 10 times that amount.
Yeah, but Servalan is running a con within the plan where, and I don't fully understand this, but Marriott it needs... The requirement of the plan was that Marriott was going to take the credits to Ensor's dad and then die...
Because so Ensor's dad, he never revealed where Orak was, and he hid it really well and encrypted all signals that would indicate where the base was. So they don't know where it is. Mm-hmm. But the Federation, actually I guess just Servalan, her plan was to feign buying Orak, but within that plan is a plan to kill Marriott and Ensor and simultaneously find out where Orak is so she can just take it for free.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know necessarily how that would be brought about. The part I didn't get was how killing Ensor would let her find out where Orak is.
Yeah.
And then Travis says, well, isn't Marriott going to die in this process? And she's like, yeah, unfortunately, yes.
She doesn't even say unfortunately, she just says yes. Travis is like, the surgeon who saved my life? Yeah, that was Marriott. And Servalan's like, I don't really care.
She says it doesn't matter, and then Travis is like, I guess not. And then the laugh track plays. So no, I'm just kidding. Yeah,
the story ends on another sitcom moment. But
it does, yeah. The weird ending for this was a missed opportunity, but yeah, just for anyone out there who's listening to this without having watched Blake 7, just we glossed over it, but there's a laugh track in just the Servalan Travis scenes. There's always a laugh. No, I'm just kidding.
You're misleading our listeners. This podcast is more popular than Trust Your Doctor. You can't mislead an audience of that size.
Trust Your Doctor, our Doctor Who podcast. It's weekly, every Sunday. Check it out.
There's a laugh track in that.
No, there's not.
No, there's not. So...
An audience of that size? What size is that?
Slightly
15
larger.
15 listeners? Oh, God.
Slightly larger than Trust Your Doctor.
All right. Anyway, yeah, the Avon, Villa, and Gan are back down on the planet. And oh yeah, Orak is located on Aristo, the planet
Right.
Aristo. That Aristo isn't this planet. I don't think this planet
No.
has a name.
Aristo, they don't know where Aristo is, but Ensor gives them coordinates. Ensor basically now commandeers the Liberator. He puts a gun to Callie's head and he said, "Okay, so you're gonna take me to these coordinates." And Blake's like, "Or what?" He's like, "I'm gonna kill Callie."
I guess how Servalan found out where Orak was that Ensor and Marriott were going to wherever Orak was.
Yeah.
So Marriott just transmitted the coordinates to Servalan secretly.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that makes sense.
But I guess Ensor Ensor has the power cells, I guess, for Orak or for something related to Orak, which I guess was some sort of failsafe mechanism in place.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ensor commandeers the Liberator, and
again, leaving
they basically
Callie
don't show up for the rest of the story.
Yeah, they don't. They do a couple times, but they don't really. There's not much there. But again, leaving Callie in charge of the medical bay is a bad decision.
Yeah, they should really learn from that. I think.
I thought. Again, I didn't think I had anything more to spoil, but I spoiled some more stuff about Callie.
I've been trying to stay away from spoilers still because I'm trying to, stay away from spoilers. I mean, I've been getting. I got a few minor spoilers when I was looking up the actors in this show because we're trying to contact a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
But none of them I feel like are super major. The fact that there's another actor who plays Travis.
That one's kind of major.
I guess it's kind of major,
if you
but
know, okay,
I don't know
say
anything around
anything.
why. So, anyway, Avon and Gan and Villa find some lady in all white who opens the door for them.
Blake is forced by Ensor to fly the Liberator out of teleport range because he wants to go get Orak. So
put it on minimum speed. He probably put it on minimum speed. We don't know what speed they put it on.
Standard divided by 7.
One Zen minimum speed for Aristo, please. So then, Avon finds this lady in all white, and she's like, "Avon, Lord Avon." And he's like,
"Yeah, they are looking for Jenna, and they don't find anything, but they go into the bunker thing that Gan and Jenna had found before."
Yeah, the lady opens the door for them.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't open the door before.
Yep.
She's like at their feet.
She's like, "Welcome, gods." Or actually, just God, because it's just Avon who's the god.
Must be that shiny silver reflective suit.
No, it's just that Villa doesn't have the stuff that gods are made of, whatever the line is in a couple of minutes. Because I'll just explain it now. Villa wonders why Avon was chosen as the god, and Avon tells him that he just doesn't have what it takes to be a god.
And Villa's like, "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" And Avon's like, "Probably."
But anyway, the woman is like worshipping Avon.
Yeah, Villa thinks she's crazy, and Avon's like, "Maybe not." Villa's like,
Well,
maybe you're crazy, Avon. How about that? You ever think of that, Avon?
Well, basically, who this woman is, she and her people, who she mentions that her group numbers like around 100. We never see them.
Yeah,
and,
she
and
mentions them, but we never see them.
It's obvious why we never see them. And she mentions that the scavengers, who are the sort of caveman-looking people outside, have about double their numbers. So again, about 200. And it's also obvious why we never see them.
We never see that many of them.
Yeah, never see that many of them. But basically, they had... This kind of reminds me of the web. Sort of a similar situation to what was going on in the web. They locked themselves in there, and they had this ship they had ready to launch, but it has genetic material on it. So also taking that concept from, I always forget the name of that story, Time Squad.
Time Squad.
So it has genetic material on it, and they need to launch it to save their race or whatever. But eventually, like over the course of time, they forgot how to operate all their technology. So they're waiting for a god, someone from the outside.
I think the girl says that the guy who knew how to control it died before they could, and no one else knew.
Yeah, I think she said they killed him, and they never really elaborate on that. But it was kind of a weird thing. They killed the guy who knew how to launch the
Yeah,
the
so
ship.
Avon, Villa, and Gan kind of look at the controls, and they end up getting the controls to turn on, but then they tell the girl, hey, we're not gonna, I think we can launch the ship, but we want to find our friend Jenna first. And she says, okay, I'll take you to where Jenna is.
Yeah, there's this set looks kind of cool because it's a spaceship, or well, a control panel for the rocket or whatever,
It looks
and there's
like,
candles all over the place.
yeah, there's candles because the power doesn't work, so the lights aren't on, but it looks kind of like mission control for the moon landing. It's got two kind of rows of computer screens that people sit behind,
Yep.
kind of movie theater style, so they're staggered in heights, and then there's a window that you can look through to see the rocket ship.
Yep. And the rocket looks a lot like real rockets because they just use stock footage when it launches. I'm guessing so.
I don't know.
It looked slightly different. Just the film
The film, yeah, it
quality
looked like a different
looked-
type of film, so
yeah.
it may have been stock footage.
But
When they
Avon,
get the lights on, the girl's like, "Deliverance has come." Anyway,
yeah. So the way they do that is Avon flips a couple switches, and I was like, really? You couldn't have just pressed random buttons and gotten this thing to turn on? Like, you had to wait for a god from the outside to do it for you.
I guess the fear that she had was that she would accidentally like blow it up or something.
Or yeah, I mean, maybe it was like hard baked into this religion that they had created, waiting for whoever could operate the machineries, like don't touch the console.
And so they go to find Jenna, and Avon sees that Jenna's in this tent of some description, and he picks up just a log that's sitting nearby, I guess, in this rock quarry. And he just kind of hits the guy through the tent, and he falls over, and Jenna's like, what the hell? And Avon busts in, and he's like,
Oh, we forgot the scene where Jenna tries to get the handcuffs off. That really important scene that needed
Right.
to be in the story.
right, that important
We also
scene.
skipped over some of the stuff with Blake and Callie, but we'll explain it in due time, I guess. But anyway, yeah, Avon saves Jenna, and they have this sort of fight for a minute or two with the scavengers.
They make their way back to the
Scavengers have
bunker.
a giant fire in the middle of their camp.
Oh, yeah. They all kind of come running when they hear, I think, they hear one of the scavengers cry out when Avon punches him or kicks him. And they have this kind of scuffle when they're back at the bunker, and then Gan gets in, he turns to Villa and is like, Villa, I think I was starting to enjoy myself. I was like, don't you have a limiter? How did you even fight those people?
And I think, doesn't Gan actually say something like, I'll just, when they're overlooking the camp, Gan is like, I'll just stay here, I won't be able to do anything and help you guys. Doesn't he actually say that?
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, with my limiter, I don't know if I could do anything.
Well, his limiter is definitely, I mean, as far as breakdown indicates, his limiter is definitely not working to the full capacity that it should be. And, his backstory, based on events in this breakdown and a couple other things, his backstory is like at least 50% a lie.
Based on this and breakdown, I think he's just lying about what the limiter does, to be honest.
Oh, God, Gan. Anyway, back on the Liberator, Blake and Callie have tried unsuccessfully to break out of Ensor's control, because Ensor has
mutiny,
Callie,
basically.
because Ensor has Callie at gunpoint, and he's sort of holding her down, and he says to Blake that if he doesn't fly the Liberator to where he needs to go, he'll shoot Callie. So Blake is like, well, I'll just wait for you to get tired, fall asleep, or whatever. You're injured and you're on medication. It's going to happen soon enough. So Ensor rigs his gun to automatically go off if his grip loosens.
He's like, so you better make sure I don't fall asleep. But then he just keels over and dies, so...
Yeah, and Callie sort of combat rolls out of the... No, actually, she doesn't combat roll. She sort
Because
of
Blake sees
rolls
his
out of the
finger
way.
slipping off the trigger.
And yeah, and he warns Callie, and she rolls out of the way. And Ensor is
Dies.
dying. I think they take him to the...
No, they don't take him anywhere.
yeah,
He dies on the bridge.
Yeah, all right. And he
He reiterates that they need to find his father, find Aurak,
Yeah,
make sure
'cause
that
we're
the
like,
Federation doesn't get Aurak.
and then he dies.
I don't know, actually, if he tells them not to let the Federation get Aurak.
He says something about Aurak. But I just remember it because he says Aurak like, Aurak!
Anyway, as
dies.
soon as he dies, Blake just stands up and goes, Zen, maximum course back to the planet, maximum speed. And then it's going to take him 4 hours to get back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how time works in Blake 7.
It doesn't.
It doesn't, but...
The answer is it doesn't. If Spacefall is anything to go by.
But Gan, Avon, and Villa were searching for Jenna for 5 hours before they got into the base thing.
Yeah, because they tell Blake says, if you don't find her in 4 hours, we'll come down and replace you like a relief crew. And then when Blake and Callie are gone, they've just left.
Yeah, they just
and then
left.
Avon's
like, all right, bring us back.
And they're not there, and they're like, oh, shoot. But they find a subspace communicator in the room, and Jenna communicates with the Liberator, and Blake's like, long story, we'll explain it when we get there, we'll be there in 4 hours. And then Jenna's like, Avon's about to become a legend, and Blake's like, wait, what? And you can see on his face, he's like, damn, that could have been me.
Damn you, Chris Boucher! No.
Damn you, Paul Darrow!
Foiled again.
Anyway, Avon just pushes a button and the rocket launches.
Yeah.
And the lady's like, yay! And then we hard cut to everyone back on the Liberator flying through space. Well, actually not flying through space yet, because then Blake lays in the course for Aristo. But they're like, so how long is it going to take for that ship to get to where it's going? And Zen's like, 500 human years.
And someone, I think Villa again, says that Avon won't get to be a god in his lifetime. And then someone else says, not like the people in the genetic banks would even know about Avon.
Yeah. So, but then I think Jenna's like, oh, but at least that lady and the people on the planet will know you and remember you, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
And then Blake's like, course for Aristo, maximum speed, and standard by, I think he says standard by 6. And then it just ends with Jenna going, standard by 6.
And this was a real missed opportunity, since this was one of the few episodes this season that sort of leads into the next episode, or at least has something to do with where they're... Actually, that's not true, because they were going to Kentaro for like 2 episodes, but, this one has Aurak, or it sets up the mystery behind Aurak. So, it's a total missed opportunity not to go like, all right, let's go find out what Aurak is, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they mention Aurak, and they're like, what is Aurak? And Blake's like, I don't know. And that's all they mention of it in that end scene.
Yeah.
I'm constantly surprised at how abrupt Blake 7 can just end every week. Every week I think, this is the week where it's going to end on a nice, normal, natural out point. No. Every week they find some way to just make it feel super jarring and abrupt.
This week, one of the things that I thought was stronger about this story was, most Blake 7 episodes so far have had 2 very distinct parts to them, or running plot lines. This one had 4, as far as I can tell. It had the thing with the genetic ship. It had Blake and Callie on the Liberator. It had Travis and Servalan, which sort of tied into Blake and Callie as well. And, it had the stuff on the planet, which is maybe not as important as the other things, but I really liked that. I felt it kept the episode interesting.
That's interesting, because that's actually the reason why I disliked this episode more than all the other ones. I just feel like they tried to do too much in this episode, and it didn't end up feeling like none of it connected satisfactorily for me. It just felt like a bunch of unrelated vignettes of things happening. It didn't feel like there was a natural progression through the episode of the plot to me.
The genetic ship one is definitely the biggest outlier there. That's definitely just something that they, stumble across. They deal with that problem, and that's sort of its own thing. Doesn't really relate to the Aurak thing they were setting up in this, but
I don't know. It just feels like, we get the Travis and Servalan stuff, and they talk about Ensor and Marriott, but nothing they do has any bearing on the plot. Blake and Callie get shipjacked by Ensor, but once again, it doesn't feel like that has any bearing on what the plot is happening in the story. It just feels like a bunch of unconnected events to me. This is probably, to me, the weakest episode of the season. Sorry, but it's
all right.
It's what I think. Did like the music though.
Yeah, the music is consistently good. Dudley Simpson really putting a lot of effort into Blake 7. I don't think there's any I mean, I don't know, because like the things I liked about this episode are what you didn't like, and vice versa. So like we're not going to come to any sort of agreement on whether that was a good decision to have 4 distinct running plotline things in this.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we don't have to come to a consensus every week.
No, but I mean, like, I don't know.
But whether or not they should have done that, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah.
We're not going to come to a consensus on that. Yeah, and that's fair. Because, I mean, I don't think they should have, but obviously you think they should have, so...
Yeah.
I mean, that's a question I guess we could pose to what little audience we have, if any of them.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good question, right? Do you like how Blake 7 often does 2 distinct things, like, well, this one did, the web is another very obvious one. The earlier episodes, come to think of it, didn't really. You know, Time Squad was sort of one... Well, not really. Spaceball and the Way Back were sort of just one thing.
I mean, in my opinion, I enjoy it when they do 2 plot lines and they're coherently related to each other somehow. My problem with this episode is that none of the plot lines feel interconnected in any way.
Well, to me, the stuff with Blake and Callie on the Liberator and Servalan and Travis feel pretty connected. I mean, the whole reason why Ensor is even
they're like just connected through dialogue, though. There's no real actions that Servalan or Travis take that...
They blew up, they rigged the ship to blow up. That's why Ensor is on the Liberator.
Yeah, but that was before the story, or at the start of the story, before the story started. The things that they say later on about Servalan's plan to get Aurak, like, none of that feels...
Okay, well, the Aurak stuff has enough... Well, actually, that's not even true either. The Aurak stuff does have to do with why Ensor jacked the Liberator.
I don't know, it doesn't feel related to me. It just doesn't feel like the plot lines are connected. I mean, they're connected through dialogue, because Servalan talks about Aurak and Ensor needs to get to Aurak, but, like, to me, it doesn't feel like Servalan or Travis, after that initial sabotage, take any action that directly affects or is even connected in any way to Blake.
They're connected enough for me. The only part that feels unconnected is the stuff with the genetic ship, which I thought was just interesting, so I liked it. But, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff felt like a rehash of...
things we've already seen before on this show, much less other things as well.
Yeah, so whether or not it was interesting to me didn't really matter, because it just felt like they were doing it again, which I thought was lazy. Especially since they've got 3 other plot lines they could follow. If you're going to add a 4th, at least don't rehash something you've done before, in my opinion anyway.
Like I always mention, I'm totally fine with watching the same thing again and again and again. You know, if I like it, I'll just watch it again, no matter how many times it's rehashed and done poorly.
Don't know how you could...
I have no standards.
I was going to say, I don't know how you could derive enjoyment from that at all. That would drive me insane. Anyway. So we actually got 2 emails this week. That is personal record for our podcasts, although one of the emails actually arrived before last week's episode went out, but after we had already recorded the email bumper at the end, because we record a week in advance, but we record the emails for each episode 2 days before the episode goes out. And this one arrived after we had already recorded, so it didn't make it into last week's episode, but it's making it into this one. So we did make it. And then the second email is from basically our third host at this point, Sergeant Drano.
I mean, I was going to say, maybe we can have Sergeant Drano on an episode. I mean, if he wants to, if he has the setup for it.
Maybe.
Let us know, Sergeant Drano.
Let us know in your next email that I know you're going to send next week, Mr. Drano. So we'll begin with the other email, the one that arrived before last week's episode first, because we're just going to do them in order that they arrived.
Right. Normally we have text-to-speech software read our emails, but we realized that it often pronounces things wrong and it's hard to understand, so we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, Zen. You're going to be even more underused.
Well, unless we find a Zen impersonator who can read the emails. If you're a Zen impersonator, email us.
Anyway, this first email we have is from Al Bingham. He says, "Hello from Australia. I first watched Blake 7 when I was a teenager in the 80s. Over the years, I forgot about it until recently when it was mentioned on a Doctor Who commentary I was watching. I bought the entire series and sat down to watch it all over again. After I had finished watching, I searched to see if anyone had a podcast about it and found Zenith. Now I'm rewatching the episodes you fellas have chatted about after you fellas have chatted about them. I'm enjoying the podcast immensely. I particularly like how irreverent you are. It's fun to look back on how we were in the 80s with a bit of humor. Don't complain too much about having to watch episodes of Blake 7 and Doctor Who. If it feels like a job, you're doing it wrong. It has been my life's ambition to become Supreme Commander. I have ended up more as a Cali figure, not a bad trade-off. Looking forward to the next podcast. RG, pronounced Aji, so I guess I just butchered that. P.S. Why is your podcast called Zenith?
Well, first off, thanks for emailing us.
Yeah.
Aji. Oh God, I hope I said that right. Thanks for emailing us. I think, we complain about watching episodes of Blake 7 and Doctor Who out of, I guess, love. It's not like we hate watching Doctor Who and Blake 7 every week.
No, we're not forcing ourselves to do this.
No,
it's just something we've done for such a long time that if the episode isn't good, we're just like, oh God.
Yeah, I think we just like to
complain
on the episode. Yeah, if the episode was bad, I think when we started, we felt a lot like, if it was bad, we never really felt like we could call it out for being bad. But I think we've been doing it for so long at this point that if it's bad, for something we've done every week to then come into the week and just be completely bored with the episode is kind of really puts a damper on the mood, I think.
I think maybe on our Doctor Who podcast, which has been going far longer than this one has, I think maybe the turning point on that was Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, where we actually just sat down and said, this is actually garbage.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, I think tried to watch it with our 1960s glasses on and sort of made us look past some of the faults that were definitely there even for its time.
Right. And I don't think there's ever been a moment on any of our podcasts where we've actually hated watching.
No. Even the worst episodes of Doctor Who and even Aurak for Blake 7, I don't regret watching them.
No, yeah. And even if the episode is bad, I think we always have fun when we come out here and record the episode. The point of this podcast is to have fun.
Yeah.
And why is our podcast called Zenith? Well, I wasn't sure if we told the story on the podcast or not. I don't remember. But basically...
We should have, but I think we just randomly mentioned it in
Yeah, we should have. Episode. We should have. So thanks for actually asking us and making us directly explain the story. But basically we spent... Most of the time setting up this podcast was spent in trying to figure out a name. Because Down and Safe was already taken, and that's the most obvious good one you could have picked.
And we hadn't really watched the show before this. This is sort of a blind watching of Blake 7, so we didn't really know. We were thinking we could we could name it after an episode title, but I guess we either just didn't want to or we found it boring to do so.
We couldn't find a way to make it sound interesting, I think.
Yeah. And a
lot of the episode titles are just one word.
Yeah. And we knew about Zen, so we're like, maybe we can do a play on words with something with Zen in it.
Yeah.
And
This is the first podcast title I think we've had that has actually been a team effort in coming up with, because I think I came up with Trust Your Doctor and you came up with Triple Play. But this one was I think I suggested Maximum Zenith or Absolute Zenith, and then you were like, we should just call it Zenith, one word. So it mostly just comes from Zen. And
us not having watched the show enough to really dive deep and pick something more related.
Yeah, I actually like the name Zenith.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's actually a pretty good name for the podcast. Maybe it's not super related to Blake 7, but I like it as a name for our podcast.
Also, we're the best Blake 7 podcasts out there, so we're the Zenith. No.
Yeah, that's why we named it Zenith.
I mean, you mentioned that you found us by...
looking for a Blake 7 podcast?
Yeah, looking for a Blake 7 podcast. So if you don't know, there are 2 other Blake 7 podcasts out there. Spacefall just started recently. They do one episode of Blake 7 every 2 weeks, and they're rewatching the show. They're Australian as well, and they go, I think, a lot more in depth than we do.
They also release fortnightly.
Yeah,
every 2 weeks.
So they're really great. You can check them out. And there's also Down and Safe, which has been going for a couple years now. They're watching pretty slowly. Again, sort of similar to our format.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
there's other Blake 7 podcasts.
Yeah, there are other. In case you get tired of our views on the show and want, I think maybe possibly a slightly more informed.
Once again, like Doctor Who, though, we're the most consistent.
Yeah. New content every week till we die.
Whoop-de-doo. But I'm glad you enjoy the show. Thanks for emailing us. Thank you for your kind words. And
yeah, you mentioned how you ended up more as a Cali figure. Yeah, that isn't a bad trade-off.
Yeah, no, Callie's a pretty good character.
Yeah.
When she's actually used in the episodes. And then, so, yeah, I guess we'll go into Sergeant Drano's email here to wrap this up, I guess. Hey guys, just watched Deliverance, the episode where our heroes investigate a crash on Planetos and get attacked by Bannermen of House Stark. Couple of questions about it. When the Northmen attack, why come Avon doesn't just blow them all away with his gun? And what's the deal with Megat? At first she says she's alone, but then she says there's less than 100 of her people left, but we never see anybody else besides her. Thoughts? Love the lever on Enso Jr.'s gun. First time I've ever seen a really obvious dead man switch on a gun in this show. Very forward thinking of Enso Jr. to choose that model just in case he ever needed to hold someone hostage while he's severely wounded. I'm a little disappointed Blake just rolled over on that one. You'd think they could talk Jr. down with a little logic. Really, buddy, if you kill her, I'm not going to help you. If you kill me, you won't be able to control the ship and your father will die anyway. You see that we are trying to help you. Let us get our crew back as soon as possible and help you, your dad, right after. That's the only way he lives. Other than these very minor flaws, another great episode. I rated a score equal to however much Villa weighs. Megat, hot or not? Question mark. All the best, Sergeant Drano, Station 7, The Door. P.S. Since you couldn't print a hard copy, if you combine all the capital letters in this email, it spells out the answer for that last week's question. Okay, a lot of stuff to unpack here, I think. How come Avon doesn't just blow them all away with his gun? Good question. I guess Avon is trying to reform his violent ways.
Or not, based on what he does in this.
What's the deal with Megat? First she says she's alone, but then she says there's 100 of her people left. We never see anybody else besides her. I think we mentioned this.
Yeah.
That she's like, oh, my people are here, and then we never actually see her people at all. She's just...
Yeah, I mean, it is weird that first she says she's alone, and then she says that, there are about 100 other people with her. But, what's not weird is that we don't see anyone because obviously they just didn't have anyone else.
Yeah, they just want to hire more extras.
I guess they could have gotten the Northmen, as you call them, to play this other group as well. It's not like they're really noticeable or have like distinct characters or faces that you can recognize. But at the same time, it might have just drawn out the episode, or it might have just not fit to have her society be like a part of the episode. Right. You know what I mean? So,
might have been too much. I mean, I already even mentioned that I thought that in Deliverance,
entire plot line was too much.
That entire plot line was just not necessary. So maybe showing her people would have pushed it even more over the edge. For me, at least, it would have. I know. A dead man switch on a gun. Yeah, very forward thinking. Kind of makes you wonder why he thought to include that on his gun. But anyway.
I kind of feel like this is a joke that we're not getting, like most of your humor, Sergeant Drano.
If you kill her, I was actually wondering the thing about talking him down with the fact that he wouldn't be able to control a ship as well. I was going to maybe explain it away by saying, well, obviously he saw Blake and Callie command Zen vocally, but then I realized that no, actually Blake lays the course into Aristo manually on the console panel, so he doesn't actually see them talk to Zen. I mean, he knows that there's a computer on board, but he doesn't know that Zen can control the ship.
Yeah, well, I think like we mentioned in this episode, Ensor's plan or Ensor Jr.'s plan, I guess, is pretty poorly thought out.
Yeah, especially since he's literally dying. And there's no
and they're willing to help him.
There's no guarantee that when he keels over that they're actually going to carry through with his plan. If he kept himself alive, he could have guaranteed that it was going to go through, but I guess he didn't really think that far ahead. You rated a great episode? I disagree, but anyway.
I agree.
You rated equal to however much Villa weighs, but what scale is that on? What scale? I mean, like, what's the maximum on that scale? Is it like Villa weight out of Villa weight? Or is it Villa weight out of like Gan weight? I rated Villa out of Gan.
You can do Mostly Made Up Doctor Who episode guide, which is a Doctor Who podcast, rates their episodes on a companion scale from Dodo to the Brig. So, maybe we should do something similar, a scale from Gan to
Blake? Avon?
Sure, Villa?
Who would you put at the top?
Scale of Gan to anyone who's not Gan?
Scale of Gan to not Gan?
Gan or nay? I don't know. Or gan, yay or gan?
Yeah, instead of hot or
I don't-
not, it's gan or nan. This episode is
What does that
gan.
even mean?
This episode is nan.
Megat, hot or not? I don't even remember what she looks like, but I'm gonna say not.
I'm gonna say yes. If I'm remembering what she looks like correctly, sure. Yeah. It feels like a trap, that question. Is there a correct answer, Sergeant Drano? Did we answer correctly? Well, we both answered differently, so we've got all the answers possible, so clearly we answered correctly. If you combine all the capital letters, it spells out the answer. So if you didn't listen to last week's episode, the question he's referencing is, in an episode called Bounty, who or what in the episode is the quicker picker upper? And according to all the capital letters in this email, which we manually picked out by hand, yes, you spelled out the Liberator, except you have an O where there should be an E.
Yeah, the first you spelled it Libo, where it should be Libe. But other than that, good job for actually making us put in effort.
There's a pun involved in that misspelling that we're missing.
There probably is, based on how many interwoven jokes, puns,
Sergeant
word
Drano's
games or whatever things in Sergeant Drano's emails.
Sergeant Drano's emails are like the puzzle I have to solve at the end of the week. Is gotta decipher all this humor.
It's homework for Zenith.
I thought I had a complex sense of humor until I met Sergeant Drano. Not that that's a bad thing. I know this sounds like I'm ragging on you, Sergeant Drano, but it's not a bad thing. I actually do enjoy the fact that your emails are so dense and irreverent in themselves.
Yeah.
Sorry if we missed that pun that you've tried to drop on us, though. It appears that we may be a bit dense ourselves.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, thank you everyone for emailing us. So we had 2 emails this week, so that's, like I said, that's a personal record for us. Very exciting. Very exciting to see that people actually like Zenith enough to email us. You can email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on whether or not Blake 7 should do 4 plot lines in one episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Zenith, the Blake 7 podcast, or you can just search for Blake 7, and you can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Please leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching Orak. But until then, the end.